Hello world! Welcome to Learning Java, one byte at a time. This is video 37 in a tutorial series geared at bringing the wonderful wide world of Java to those with little or no programming experience. This video is a continuation of the development of the Booker application, a vehicle appraisal app. In the last video, we performed unit testing on the price adjuster and Bluebook classes to ensure that they were returning a valid appraisal amount for our vehicle object. It seems like everything is working correctly so far, and so going into the final stretch, all we really have left to do is to tie all of our classes together into our model view controller design pattern. And as we've discussed in prior videos, the MVC design pattern, the model view controller, is based on the three-layer architecture, which separates the presentation layer that the client interfaces with from the business layer, which is where the logic is performed, from the database layer, which is where all of the file information storage and retrieval happens. And so a model view controller is an industry standard in this, and it essentially uses those three classes. The model class is where everything is essentially all of the logistics is taken care of in the application. The view is where all of the interaction happens, all of the interfaces, the user interface, and everything that's going to be clicked or dragged or scrolled. And the controller class is going to be the nuts and bolts that ties together those two classes. And really in this project, the largest class that we're going to be working with is the view class. This class has almost 600 lines of code in it. And that's essentially because there's so many different working parts to our interface. There's lots of buttons and panes and panels and text fields and radio buttons and checkboxes and all of the like. And so we're going to take the view class and we're going to break up the construction of this class into a couple of different videos just to make it more digestible. But just to sort of outline what the view class is going to look like, we're going to start by making all of our imports. And the imports, although there are quite a few, all come from basically the same library, which is the JavaX Swing library. This is a library that allows us to tap into sorts of user interface objects like the buttons, the checkboxes, the text fields, and all of the like. And this library is in itself an extension of the Abstract Windows Toolkit, the AWT library from Java, which is an older style of that library. It's almost deprecated. The JavaX Swing is a more updated version, and even that's becoming deprecated now with new interface technology like JavaFX and other such things. However, just because this is kind of a simple project, the JavaX Swing library is going to be more than adequate to take care of designing this interface. And so in the imports, we're going to be importing our buttons, our image icons, our checkboxes, what are be called the panes and the frames, labels for all of our input fields, panels, radio buttons, text areas, and text fields, and the like. After we do all of our imports, we're going to need to declare all of our private fields for this class. And the private fields are going to be basically declaring these labels, text fields, and buttons in all of the instances that we're going to need them. And then after that, we're going to need to define the constructor for this class, because when the controller calls the view class, it's going to implement it, it's going to instantiate it using the constructor. During the construction of this class, when the constructor is called, the class is going to go through and basically make all of the assignments to these fields that we've defined by assigning them constraints and filling in their labels, and then attaching them finally to that entire view object, which is going to be the panel. Now, after that, we're going to need to declare some methods, which is going to be a method such as the clear project method, which is just going to go through and basically clear out all of the fields. There's also going to be all of the getters and setters that we're going to need so that we can fill in the information whenever we load a new file, or so that we can take that information and then pull it into the controller and actually do something with it. And then finally, we're going to need to declare what are called action listeners. And so every time there's a click on a radio button or checkbox or a save or load button, it's going to use an action listener to call another method that's going to define what action happens whenever the user clicks on that. And so this is a pretty lengthy class. And so what I want to do is I want to start simply by declaring our imports. And then we're going to use the next couple of videos to finish out this class. So if we jump into Notepad++, we can begin here with a blank Java file called view.java. Just like always, we're going to make sure to include it in the correct package, which is the Booker package, and then we'll go ahead and make our import statements. So first we're going to import from the AWT library, the Abstract Windows Toolkit. So from java.awt, we're going to have something called a grid bag constraints. And the grid bag constraints are going to be the library or the object that we use to set constraints on certain view objects. After that, we're going to import from the same library, the AWT library, a grid bag layout. And the grid bag layout is going to be like the constraints. It's going to give us certain ways that we can have those view objects laid out, whether in a grid or in a row or column or centered or what have you. After that, let's go ahead and import from the same library insets, and just like the name implies, this is a way of formatting these view objects. And then finally from this library, we're going to import our event action listener. And the action listener is going to be the class that allows us to actually perform additional methods whenever these view objects are interacted with by the user. So then from the swing library, the JavaX swing, we're going to import our button group. The button group is used for whenever you have two or more radio buttons. The nature of radio buttons is that only one of them can be selected, and how Java is able to tell which group of buttons it's going to have uniquely selected is by the button group. After that, we're going to import the image icon, and this will allow us to have that fun little logo at the top of the application. Next, we're going to import our J button, and this is just going to be the button that the user is going to click to either load or save or generate the sales ad, just a very typical button. After that, we will import our J checkbox. Alright, and unlike radio buttons, checkboxes can have multiple boxes enabled, but they'll still be grouped together. Next, we'll import the Jframe. The Jframe is what goes inside the panel, and the Jframe is how all of these visual elements are organized. Then we're going to import our JLabel. The JLabel is going to be the basically the name of each one of these visual elements. And then we can import our JOption pane. We can then import our JPanel, and the panel is what all of these elements will be inset or laid into. And then we'll import our single radio buttons. Then we'll import our JText area, and the text area is like a text field, except it's going to be where the sales ad is going to be generated, so it's going to be a much wider and longer text area. And then finally, we're going to import our text field. Alright, and that takes care of all of the import statements, and as you notice, they are all from only two different libraries, but there are quite a few elements that we're bringing into play here, so we need to make sure we have access to all of them. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and define the class itself. It's going to extend the Jframe so that we can begin to tap into all of the functionality of that library. And as I said, this is going to take a couple of videos, so we won't make any of these videos too long. We'll keep it digestible. Anyway, hopefully this was a good start to this class. Again, 600 lines of code. This is definitely a beast. Look forward to seeing everyone back again in the next video. And please don't forget, all of this code, the finalized version of this code is available in a link in the description to the GitHub repository. Feel free to just download that if you don't want to code side by side. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing everyone back again in the next video. Have a wonderful night.